This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. This is Python's Paradise, your film and music show, and this is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena. And folks, I've had a number of the Friday the 13th alumni here on the show since starting podcast in 2015. And, Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning. I've had 3 of the gorgeous females on here, but tonight's a landmark because we have one of the cool males from the film on here this evening. And he's done a bunch of interesting movies, but he might be most famous for this. Who knows? Or it might have been when he got into college. Folks, I give you the awesomely talented Corey Parker. How do you do, Corey?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. What's weather like where you are?
We've had a beautiful day today. We're not having any problems so far. I guess we're going to get rain next week, but I'm in Memphis, and so far so good.
Yeah, we had some rain today, but hopefully we'll avoid that hurricane weather.
Yeah.
That's pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, before we get into your films, I was just wondering if we could get a little bit of your background.
Sure. I was born in New York City, and I started acting as a kid when I was about 5, and doing commercials and stuff, and then I went on to doing after-school specials as I grew older, and TV movies, and I went to the High School of Performing Arts in New York, which was in Times Square back then.
Was that the movie, was that where Fame was shot?
That's the Fame School. The first year that I attended was the year that the movie came out, and we were all invited to a special screening of it in Times Square.
Okay.
Down there, so it was pretty exciting to start attending the school and then go see the movie about the school. We were pretty hyped.
I've done an interview from Fame a couple of years ago. I had Antonia Franceschi on here from the movie, and
Sure.
I love Fame. I think it's a terrific movie. So you went there, huh?
I did. Yeah,
wow.
We had a good time. Yep.
Did you relate to any of the characters in that movie?
I mean, I think the thing about the movie was just the general feeling of it. It was accurate in terms of all of our. Every day I had acting lessons for half a day and then academics for half a day. I never had academics for an entire day during the 4 years I was there. It was a very creative place, so. There were professional dancers teaching the dance students. There were professional musicians teaching the music students, and the same with the drama department. It was really a whole lot of creative people. There was no bullying. There was no teasing. Everybody was different. Everyone was unique and different, and it was a place where you could feel safe and creative and then you could walk right outside the building and you in the middle of Times Square. So you had access. You could go up to Central Park. You could go anywhere. It was a pretty exciting time.
So I heard that the teachers in the movie are the same teachers that teach there. Is that true?
Some of them were, yeah. Some of the teachers were in the movie.
Which ones did you have?
I don't remember all of them, but I know that James Moody, who was an acting teacher that we had, he was in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you say you started at the age 5 acting. How much pressure is that on you at that age?
Well, what had happened was my father died in 1968, so my mother had been acting, and so she took me and my brother out and got headshots and started getting us agents, and then we started auditioning and doing commercials to help, earn money. So I guess there was definite pressure there. But that was just the way we grew up. That was the world we grew up in. And my brother did a commercial in 1970 with Robert De Niro.
Okay.
It's still on YouTube. It was for American Motors, and he played De Niro's younger brother.
Okay.
And we were on sets and working from a young age.
So after the performing arts, what came from then?
Well, I got into NYU, but I really didn't stay there very long. Excuse me. I booked a movie with a director named Michael Winner, which was shooting in and around London. So I left NYU. I lived in London for a while, in North London, and then we shot that movie. And then I went back to New York and got a play at the Public Theater, And so I just kept working, and so I didn't end up going back to school. My school was doing plays at the theaters, off-Broadway theaters in New York. And I became a member of the Actors Studio when I was 20, and a member of the Ensemble Studio Theater, where I had done a lot of plays, and my mother had acted there, my sister had acted there. So we just, we had kind of a rarefied environment that we grew up in. We lived in a building called Manhattan Plaza,
Okay.
Between 42nd and 43rd Street. 2 high-rises, and you have to be an artist to live there. You have to prove that you're a working actor or writer or painter, dancer, and so it was all creative people in both these buildings, and these are like 46 and 45-story buildings. So I really grew up just completely surrounded by creative people.
Okay.
I loved it. I didn't realize exactly how rare it was until years later when I, was in LA and then ultimately coming down here when I realized that we'd had something really special.
Okay, now the movie you did with Michael Winner, that was a horror film, I recall. Is that right?
It was. It was called Scream for Help.
Oh, that's right. Because I was looking at your credits today, but I did not. That came out before you did A New Beginning.
It did.
Give us a little fresher. I'm not familiar with this movie. Tell us about it and what your part was.
It's a movie. I think the premise is that there's a teenage girl living with her mom, and the mom has a boyfriend who turns out to be, relatively evil.
Okay.
And starts killing people one at a time. I played the boyfriend of the girl. She kept trying to enlist me and fighting against this guy. I didn't believe her at first, and ultimately, of course, a lot of people died. It was a slasher film for sure. And Michael Winner, he had directed Brando in a Henry James novel, brought to the screen called Night. I think it was The Nightcomers.
Okay.
And he had done Death Wish, so I kind of expected more out of him, to be honest. But he wasn't real pleasant to work with. But we got through it.
Yeah, they're actually remaking Death Wish, and I'm not really for remakes, but I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of looking forward to this new one, because one of the things that bothered me about Death Wish, which I thought was a well-made movie, but I didn't like the fact that he never did get the people that harmed his family.
Right.
That always bothered me,
Yeah, that makes sense. I never thought of that.
Yeah, whereas I think Bruce Willis is going to solve that problem.
And so after that, the next thing I did was for Adrian Lyne. In 9.5 weeks, I had basically a walk-on role, and the scene was Kim Basinger. And that was, I think I had 3 auditions to get that part. And that was a fun. Adrian Lyne was a great guy, and I had a good time with him. I remember him saying after I rapped, he said, "Well, Mickey Rourke, he said, Mickey's in his trailer with Sean Penn, and if you want, I'll bring you over there if you want to go, hang out with him." And I was like 18 and totally intimidated, so I was like, "No, I think I'm going to go home now." I'd been filming all day, so but it was a positive experience.
I love 9.5 weeks. I don't think 50 Shades of Grey has anything on 9.5 weeks.
Right, yeah, I hear you.
And you know what? I just ordered the soundtrack of that movie last year, and I could not believe how many Canadian artists are on the soundtrack.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, a lot. It's got a great music soundtrack, and it was very innovative. I especially love the refrigerator sequence with bread and butter playing. That was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you weren't on that movie very long, though, for shooting, huh? No?
No, I wasn't.
Well, what was it like to meet Kim Basinger?
I mean, she was very sweet, and she didn't have any attitude around me anyway. I mean, she was totally cool, and obviously she was just totally gorgeous. I mean, it was, a pleasure to be working with her. But she was just very sweet and supportive and stuff. So it was fine to work with her. And I ended up working with Mickey Rourke again in a movie that I'm not in. It was the movie Angel Heart.
Okay.
And Alan Parker was directing that movie, and I was playing a beat poet. in New York, but an entire New York sequence was removed from the movie, unfortunately. But I got to do a scene with Mickey Rourke in that movie, so it wasn't a whole lot, but it was just fun to work with him, and it was fun to work with anyone at that point. But particularly, I thought he was just great as an actor. He had done some wonderful work, and he had trained with the acting coach Sandra Seacat, and I had trained with her. I'd started training with her when I was 13, so I knew that he was making interesting choices with everything he was doing, and it was just fun to watch him work.
Now, the location where you was in 9.5 Weeks, the art gallery there, was that a real location or was that a set?
Yeah, no, that was a real art gallery down in Soho. I think it was off of Prince Street, and that was real.
Yeah, like I said, the locations even were just stunning in that movie. I love 9.5 Weeks.
Yeah, definitely.
And then afterwards, of course, you were in Friday the 13th, Part 5, A New Beginning, where you played Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get that part? Was it just a standard audition?
It was a standard audition. I was in L.A. and I was still living in New York, and I wasn't really comfortable in L.A. I didn't have a car in L.A. I had just gotten there. I had a friend, an actor named Perry Lang. He's also a director, and he's done a bunch of stuff, but he had a beat-up old Buick, and he would come and pick me up in the valley where I was staying and bring me into town for auditions sometimes. And that was one, he picked me up and brought me in there, and I did the audition. I remember the director was in there, and we had a good time, and luckily, I booked the job, so I was real excited.
Just out of curiosity, do you still know the lyrics to your song you sang in that movie?
Well, the song was Ready, Teddy, Ready, which Elvis did it, but I was doing the version by Little Richard.
Okay.
And so he the director said, well, we need something here. You need to sing a song, or he was just coming up with ideas, and he threw that out, that he wanted a song right immediately. And so I thought that song popped in my head, and I thought that would be just a fun song, to be singing. So I sang it in the rehearsal, and he was like, no, you can't sing that song. We don't have the rights to the song. But he said, you can sing that, just make up new words.
Okay.
Hence, you have the song that's in the movie.
I remember when I first saw A New Beginning, and when your scene comes on, it got an immediately it got a laughter reaction because of the song. And do you want to sing it for us right now, or do you remember the words? And you're allowed to swear on here. Don't worry.
The car ain't starting. It ain't starting, man. I remember that part. That and duty. It's all ready, Teddy, ready. Ready, Teddy, ready to rock and roll.
I like that part. You go, I'm going to kick your ass, kick your ass.
That's like, when the director tells you, make up the scene. It's not on the page, make it work. Put something there, You go, it's kind of fun just to make stuff up.
He goes, it's effed up again. It ain't starting. I gotta kick your ass. Fix the effing car.
Yeah, basically I'm narrating the scene to that scene.
Oh, I watched that scene last night with my brother. I said to my brother, I said, you know who I'm interviewing tomorrow? And he goes, who? Because he's the one that does up my YouTube videos. And
right.
I said, I'm interviewing this guy, and he just chuckled. He said, because he knew I was going to have a good time with us, because he was familiar with the scene as well.
Yeah.
But that song, it just there was a lot of interesting music pieces in A New Beginning, because of course Tiffany Helm had, of course, the Sundell Echo scene as well. So a lot of interesting uses of music in that movie. But I loved your sing along, and were you nervous about doing that, or were you able to just do that on the fly?
I did both. I was definitely nervous, and I was doing it on the fly. It was just like, you don't want to get fired. Someone comes up to you and says, you've got to make up, an element of this scene to make it work. And I think I was 19, so it was just, but I think it just came from doing theater in New York, that where you get to rehearse, you get to try things and play. So, that's where those chops come in handy when you're suddenly required to do it on film, and you've got experience doing that on stage. I think it's a lot of actors are that way, so it definitely helped.
Yeah, and you were made up to kind of look like a greaser, kind of like you walked off the set of Grease. Now, whose idea was that?
I don't know whose idea that was. I mean, Anthony Burley, the guy I was working with, we were friends from New York, so that was good that we were together. But I mean, I don't know what, I could not tell you why that was the look, but that's what we got.
It did add something to it, though. I mean, I almost look at A New Beginning like they had so many, the body count was at the highest at that time.
Yeah.
And it's almost like so many characters are just seen and then they're killed off before we even get to know them. And I got to wonder, if you take all these characters from A New Beginning and put them in a screwball comedy, you gotta wonder what that would be like. Yeah, you get to work with Anthony Burl, who of course got the flare gun in the mouth, and
yes, he did.
You was bullying him. So you say he was a good friend of yours. You still connected with him today?
I've spoken. We don't talk all the time, but we have spoken. Like in the past year, and I mean, he's a very creative guy, and we had a great time together. And we come from a similar background, and so it was just happenstance that we worked together, but it was great. We had a good time.
Yeah. Well, that does come across when you guys are doing the scene. And of course, you end up getting your throat slashed with a machete. Now, talk about that process.
Well, that was cool because, they had that big machete, and it was cutaway so that it would go, over your neck and look like it was in your neck. But there's just a cutaway there. And then it was two pieces of metal, the blade, so that there was space. There was a hose that went into the handle, a tube, and they would put the fake blood through the tube, between the two pieces of metal, and come out right where your neck was as he was twisting it. So, it was cool to be a part of that. I liked that part.
How long did it take to do that?
That took a while, and I mean, we were in the canyon, up in LA off of Coldwater Canyon, like down in sort of the woods in the middle of the night. The whole shoot was a night shoot. So the whole thing was kind of spooky. I mean, it was like dark woods all around you, and you're in the middle of it with your lights and your camera, and you're murdering people basically. It's kind of spooky.
Yes, and of course, Anthony, of course, got the flare in the mouth. Now,
they had to make that whole fake head of his. They had to take a cast of his head, and then use the cast to create another head of his out of his face and everything out of, that rubber and the silicone, and then then the time came in the middle of the night to start sticking the flares in there and acting like it was him. I mean, it was bizarre, very bizarre.
Yes, and of course, you two are killed off early in the movie, and of course, Danny Steinman directed the movie. Now, Danny's an interesting guy because I know that he came from, I guess he was involved in making pornography, was he not?
Oh, was he? I did not know that.
Okay, yeah, I get. Well, that's just from what I've heard and know.
Well, the thing that I had heard was, I mean, I was asked by another person who interviewed me. It was for that DVD documentary that they made.
Oh, Peter M. Bracke did that. Crystal Lake Memories?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was talking to me, asking me if I knew that Danny was doing cocaine at the time.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about. So, I mean, I look back on it and I think, oh, it's possible. I mean,
I know nothing about that, but
not a lot of directors turn to the actor and say, like, make up something new for the scene. I mean, obviously it happens, and I don't know. I couldn't say if he was or not, but
Well, I heard the pornography thing from a few sources, but
Yeah.
there is an awful lot of nudity in New Beginning.
Right,
So
right.
yeah, they could almost call it a nude beginning.
Oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, he was a nice guy to work with. I mean, he was pleasant. You know, some people are not pleasant. Obviously, like Michael Winter was extremely unpleasant to work with.
Okay.
And Danny was totally cool. I thought he was creative and fun, and he created a good energy on the set for people to, you know, try new things. And so, I mean, I had a good experience with him.
Okay. Now, you were just in that scene there. How long did it take that entire scene with you and Anthony to do?
Well, I mean, probably, you know, we started when everything got dark. We had to wait for dark, and then we were done before dawn. So that's how long.
Okay.
Took that night.
Okay, because I often hear of shoots that take weeks on just one scene, but
Right. No, this didn't take long.
okay. Now I know you weren't in the rest of the movie, but did you get to meet the rest of the cast or see anything else that was going on in the movie?
I honestly didn't. I never went to the set any other times. That was the only time that I was there.
Okay. So you never did get to meet any of the other actors even after,
No.
huh?
I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've had three of the females on here. I remember the first time I saw Melanie Kinnaman. What a gorgeous woman.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had her on here. Debbie Sue Voorhees has been on here a couple of times, who played Tina, and had Tiffany Helm on, who was Violet. And I'm still in touch with all three, and they've all been very pleasant with me. Yep. But
Cool.
yeah, did you prior to doing A New Beginning, did you see any of the previous four?
I think I'd seen the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you a horror movie fan, or was that not your cup of tea?
It wasn't really my cup of tea. I was studying acting, and I was more into like watching old Brando and De Niro films, you know,
Okay.
and watching Meryl Streep and all that stuff over and over and over, trying to watch, you know, their choice making and stuff. But you know, I think my brother was more into it. My older brother liked that stuff.
Well, here's a movie, when I was looking up your credits, I hadn't heard of, but I'm going to get you to talk about it, called Willy Millie, directed by Paul Snyder. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this was originally for AFI. They were producing indies at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an indie. Patty Duke was in it.
Mm-hmm.
And Pam Siegel, Eric Gurry, J.D. Cullum. we had a pretty good cast. I think John Glover was in it. I mean, It was a good cast.
Yep.
It was just that story of, you know, if a girl could convincingly become a boy, how she would be treated differently.
Okay.
So she was Millie at first, and then she became Willie. And that was a fun shoot. We did that in Atlanta, and we spent a couple months there, and that was a lot of fun, that shoot, and working with those people and everything. That was a good time.
Now, since I haven't seen this film, tell us about your part in the film.
Gosh, I don't even remember. I just remember he was like a nerd.
Okay.
He was part of the gang, and I don't know what his significance was anymore. I haven't watched that, who knows how long, decades. But I was there for a while, so I guess I had something to do in their story. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, you did that, I think, the same year you did 9.5 Weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. And then, of course, you got to work with Mike Nichols, who unfortunately we just lost not too long ago.
Yes, that's true.
Now, he was a really good director, you know, The Graduate and movies like that. What was he like as a director?
He was sort of a wonderful dream of a director. I mean, he was, you know, extremely creative. He had a profound trust of the creative process. He was never like left brain. He was never just giving you results. He was very invested in the creative process. He valued actors above everyone else on the set. And I saw it one day. The crew were setting the lights, but the cast was on the set. We had been rehearsing beforehand, and the crew was getting louder and louder. And that was the one time I saw him raise his voice. and he sort of gave this very brief lecture on the importance that when a cast is on the set, you have to let them work. You know, if they're there, you can't be so loud so that they can't concentrate when they're about to shoot a scene. And there are very few directors who give that talk. You know, I wish there were more, but he really had great esteem in the actors. And he used to have Universal send him film prints every weekend of old films, like Camille, you know, old films that he loved. He would do screenings every weekend for us to come and watch, and he'd talk about the films. I mean, it was, the whole thing was a dream. It was pretty amazing.
Yes, and the film in question, of course, is Biloxi Blues.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get to work with Matthew Broderick.
Yep.
Yes. What was that experience? Of course, Christopher Walken, also an amazing actor in this as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, I think my experience with Matthew was just that he was a, you know, great guy, sweetheart, you know, good person. He worked really hard. He took his career very seriously, and he took his work very seriously. And I think he understood the responsibility that was on his shoulders when he did a movie, and he took it seriously, you know. But I mean, I would run into him years later in LA, and he was, you know, he was just a good guy. I had a great experience with him. I think with Christopher Walken, you know, that was an interesting time in his career. He wasn't really working a lot at that time, and it was interesting to see he was friends with Mike Nichols, and my sense of it was that Mike Nichols brought him in to play this role. But if you saw that role done on Broadway, it was a big burly actor. Sergeant Toomey was a big burly guy, and so Christopher Walken is a lot of things, but he's not a big burly guy. He was kind of slight. He's not really that big, and so, you know, I wondered, how is this going to work? You know, I mean, it's like he's supposed to be intimidating. And so it was interesting, before we shot our very first scene, which was a scene that involved all of the guys. We were all lined up outside the barracks, and the sergeant was coming out. Before the scene, he started, right before we shot, he started shouting at the top of his lungs, "Waka, waka, waka," while sort of using his arms to do like a little dance. He'd go, "Waka, waka, waka." And it was so loud and so strange that everybody shut up. All the actors got totally silent, wondering, what is going on with this guy? And just after he finished that, he'd go inside and he'd call rolling and action, and he'd come out, and we were all so stunned by what he'd just done that somehow he had instantaneously created that effect of intimidation. He had everyone wondering what was coming next out of him. So we were all kind of afraid. We had no warning about it. And so he would constantly do stuff like that. He would just play little kind of tricks. I remember hearing him. We at the barracks. Some of the barracks were turned into our dressing rooms, and I could hear him. And before shooting, he would scream into a pillow, trying to get his voice to be grovelly. You know, his voice is now, but you know, before, when he'd come in, he'd scream into a pillow for a long time, and then he'd come out and he'd get this grovelly voice, and that was Toomey. You know, the most dramatic story I could tell you was that there's a scene where Toomey gets very drunk, and he's got a loaded pistol in his hand, and he comes out in the barracks and starts, you know, bossing some of the guys around. And I will tell you that when we shot that scene, they called action, and Christopher Walken came out, and he appeared, and he was so drunk that he could barely stand.
Okay.
And then we had that effect again. We were suddenly terrified. This guy's got a pistol in his hand, and he's very drunk. And we waited as he slowly made his way to his mark, and it took a long time. And we didn't know, are we going to cut when he gets here? How's he going to say his lines? He's totally drunk. And he got to his mark, and he stood there just breathing and looking at us. And finally, the script supervisor said his first line out loud. And then he said his line. And then we responded. And there was that pause again, and the script supervisor said his next line, and that's how we did the scene. It was pretty unnerving, I'll tell you that.
Yes, and Penelope Ann Miller, of course, was also in that movie as well.
Yes,
yep.
Penny was in there, and I got into trouble because I had kind of a hot rod then. I had a '66 Chevy Chevelle that had been rebuilt and modified, and it was a convertible, and I used to drive it to work during rehearsals.
Okay.
And after one rehearsal, Penny came up and said, I want to go in your car. You take me home. So she got in my car with the convertible top down. It was a very powerful car. and I burned out. I punched the accelerator and burned out, showing off for her and everything. I dropped her at home, and I got back to the place that I was staying, and I had a call on my answering machine saying, this is the production office. You are never to drive your car to or from the set ever again.
Oh.
They didn't want anything happening, so I had to get into the cast van every day, which was always a colorful experience.
And of course, we need to know how you got into college.
Right, how I got into college. Yeah, that was an interesting film. That was originally directed by Jan Eliasberg, who's a wonderful director.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason they did, and she hired me. For some reason, 20th Century Fox did not like the dailies for the first week, and they did something terrible, I thought, which was during lunch. On like the 7th or 8th day of shooting, one of the representatives from the studio stood up on a table where everyone was eating,
Mm-hmm.
and they asked for quiet, and they announced in front of everyone that she was being fired.
Oh, that's terrible.
It was terrible. She was there, and we were all there, and we all liked her. She was a sweetheart, and she was really creative. So it wasn't a good vibe. And then right after that, the cast, Laura Flynn Boyle and Chris Rydell, we all got together and we went to get some dinner, and we sat there going, who's going to be fired and who's going to stay? We had no idea if we were going to be fired. We didn't know what was happening. And then ultimately, they brought in Savage Steve Holland, who we had a great time with. It was like diametrically opposed as far as directors. I mean, a total opposite. But he was also very creative, and we had a great time with him, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, he just not too long before that had done, I think it was Better Off Dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like to work with Laura Flynn Boyle?
Well, I mean, we got along really well, and we used to all hang out. Maya Levinson and Laura Flynn Boyle and myself, we'd go hang out and do stuff. So we had a good time together. Chris Rydell. I mean, it was a good bunch of people, and I mean, Laura was like, my mother was living in Santa Monica, and one time Laura just seemed kind of, to me, a little bit, she was wounded, or lost in some way. And so I took her to my mother's house, and I introduced her to my mother, and I said, if you ever need help, like you call us and we'll come and get you. Like if there's anything, you're not alone here. Like my family's here. Like if you need it, which she never did. But watching where her career went, I kind of wish she had.
Yeah.
I mean, just in terms of doing all of that extent of plastic surgery and stuff. It just, I mean, I care about her, and it's hard to watch someone do that to themselves. I think that's my opinion.
True. Yeah. And of course, Anthony Edwards, you get to work with him.
Yeah, another sweet guy, just a good guy. I mean, there's nothing bad to say about him. He was just totally positive. And Olan Shepard was in that. Charlie Rocket was in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there were a lot of good people in that movie. And it wasn't like a big hit or anything, but the people who love that movie, there's a lot of people who appreciate it.
Yes. Yeah, you've done quite a bit of television as well. Is there anything that stand out that was a memorable experience?
I think Will and Grace was a great experience. 30-something. I got to do a TV movie with Sophia Loren where I played her son.
Okay.
She was amazing. I mean, she would always tell me stories about her career. She'd tell me about working with Charlie Chaplin and Marlon Brando, and the Countess from Hong Kong, and how she would say Charlie Chaplin was sadistic, and he would have her do he had her do 85 takes of a close-up once.
Oh, wow.
And she wished that Marlon Brando had stood up for her, and you hear these stories, you never realize what really goes on behind the scenes. She would talk about the day that she was first discovered, that she was just at the beach, and and suddenly someone's asking her if she'd be interested in being in a movie. And I mean, she was very open, she was very family oriented, and she usually had her sons around, she always treated me like family. She was kept me close to her, and it was just a wonderful experience to work with her. It was her. That's just one of those special experiences for sure. And that was in Toronto too.
Yeah, I'm here in the New Brunswick area in Canada. Are you familiar with this part?
I've never been to that part. I've only been to Vancouver and Toronto.
Just Vancouver and Toronto. Yeah, and most people don't know where I'm located up here.
Yeah.
Although surprisingly, some of your co-stars from A New Beginning do know where I'm located. Melanie Kinnaman, Tiffany Helm, and Ron Sloan, they all knew where I was. So.
Yeah, well, remember, I spent half a day in academics, so that's why I'm sort of lacking in my geography skills.
Yeah, you know what? I bet you Donald Trump probably don't even know where I'm located.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I'm sure.
Although I won't say that to him. Now, you are also an acting coach, and of course, I gotta allow you to plug that. Now, tell us about this. How did you get into that?
Well, I mean, originally I had started coaching friends. There was a point in my career when Patrick Dempsey asked me to coach him, and I started coaching him. And I would just work with different people. I had dated Lisa Bonet for a while, and I coached her for an audition. So it was just here and there. And then in 2000, my mentor, Susan Batson in New York, I had moved back to New York with my family, and she said, "Why don't you teach?" And I said, "I don't really think I'm a teacher, And she said, "Well, why don't you come to class?" So I came to the class, and it was full of actors, really serious actors. And she entered the class that she was supposed to teach, and she said, "Well, this is Corey Parker, and he's going to be teaching your class. I have to go to Paris to work with Juliette Binoche, so I'm off." And she left. And so it was, immersion. I mean, it was just throwing me in at the deep end. So that's how I started teaching, and I found as I taught that I really loved it. And one of the things that I love about it is that I get to teach people things that nobody taught me. I've had some great teachers, but there are lots of things that nobody taught me. And, it just has to do with being on a set or how to approach the business or, how to work when, everything around you on a set is going against you, how to find your concentration, all of these very practical things, I love to teach. And so, I've taught people like Tony Winter, Annalee Ashford. I taught Sean Combs, for Raisin in the Sun on Broadway. Mm-hmm. That was an intense experience. We used to work at his house in Miami, and I would work him for hours and hours into the night. And whenever we stopped, if it was 3 o'clock in the morning or whatever, he'd run upstairs to his room and come down looking like all done up and said he's going to go out dancing. So he just had so much energy. It was incredible. But I coach people here where I live in Memphis. I coach people in New York and in LA. I work on the phone. I work on Skype. I fly to New York and I teach classes at HB Studio. I fly to LA and I've taught at a lot of different studios, most recently at BGB Studios. I teach at the university here as a guest artist.
Okay.
And so I just stay busy. I teach all ages. I teach beginning to, master. I think acting is a learning process, and that's something that I love to do.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing this?
Teaching since 2000.
Wow. You got almost 20 years in on that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, it's just, I love doing it. I teach classes in Nashville. I just, I try to stay busy, but, if an actor's hungry, then it's fun to work together,
Yes, absolutely. So, I know I was talking to on Facebook with Debbie Sue Voorhees recently, and I guess a bunch of the Friday the 13th Part 5 A New Beginning cast are going to be at, don't quote me on that, I think it's HorrorCon or something like that. I could have that wrong.
I'm going to quote you on it.
Huh?
I'm going to quote you on it.
You quote me on it. It's one of those horror cons that she and Melanie and John Shepard and a bunch of them are supposed to be at. And I was just wondering, have you ever done the convention scene?
I'm out of the loop. I just don't know anything about it. No one's ever asked me, but I probably would do it if someone brought it up,
Yeah, I've never been to them. Like Ron Sloan, I was talking to him to book for an interview today, and he was saying, you got to do the conventions. And I'm like, I never ever get out of New Brunswick. I'm 45 and have never been outside the province. I'm terrible. But I get people I've interviewed saying, you got to do the conventions, you know?
Yeah.
Do you get recognized a lot?
Not that much anymore. I'm not, I can't really have a big career when I'm here in Memphis. There's very little industry here.
Mm-hmm.
But, some people do. I've been recognized, around the world in places that I've gone to, from England to Australia, but it's not really an important thing to me ultimately.
No, I was gonna say, because one thing I ask them, anybody does a convention, I always ask them what's the strangest thing they've ever been asked to sign, and I hear various different stuff, And
right.
So what do you most get recognized for? What one of your movies?
I think 30-something.
Wow.
TV movie, and that and Biloxi Blues,
Okay.
But I will say that the people who recognize me from Friday the 13th, Part 5, are very enthusiastic people.
Oh, yeah?
They get very excited about it. They like that scene, and they get excited about it. It's wonderful. I mean, I didn't know that for years. I didn't know anything about it, and then I started sort of learning over the years that people appreciated it, and that's always fun.
I think you should have went on Dancing with the Stars and sang the car song.
Wouldn't that be good?
You think so? I bet you Simon Cowell will give you the pass.
Yeah, I think so.
So do you have any charities or anything like that you're involved with?
Charities? I mean, I'm a father. I've got two grown sons, so I've spent the past, my older son's 28.
Mm-hmm.
So I've spent the past 28 years fathering these kids, and that's been a big thing for me because, as I told you, my father died in 1968, so
mm-hmm.
I didn't get to have that. So all of my care and love and parenting and everything goes toward these kids. I mean, if someone needs help, I'll help in any way that I can. I've helped people, people who need help who can't afford to move out of their home, or evicted. I've helped people move. It's like if I hear about something, I love to help people. I mean, I think that's how the world's supposed to work.
Absolutely. And you turned out quite well. You sound very well adjusted.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, you turned out. I think you turned out better than Pete.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. I mean, for me, there was a point, I spent 20 years in Los Angeles, mm-hmm. and there was a point where I had to go. We had our son, my younger son, and my older son lives in Australia.
Oh.
And he's got dual citizenship. And my younger son, when he was little, my wife and I decided to get out of L.A. I was kind of burnt after 20 years, and I really wanted to just have the experience of being a person instead of only an actor.
True.
Because, I started young, so I was always an actor. And that's all that I was. I didn't have like a life where I got to do regular person things much. I was always focused on my career and on my work. So when we got here to raise my younger son, I really wanted to be a regular person. And mm-hmm. I didn't tell anyone I was an actor at first. And I did regular jobs like mowing yards. And, I just wanted to be a person and be seen as a person. And I wanted my son to see me as a person. I didn't want him to grow up in L.A. where kids learn very young about the pecking order mm-hmm. and all of that. So, so it was a real conscious decision to place myself in an environment where there's just regular people around. There's not much industry around. It's not great for my career, but it's transformed my life, that's for sure. Because living in L.A. as an actor can be, it can be scary, because you're either booking a job or you're auditioning for a job. And so you're always trying to get that approval. You're always hoping, that you're going to succeed. It's the most intense competition in the world. And I've worked a lot, but I mean, there was just a point where I knew I needed to get out of that, that game, and just be a person. And that's where I love teaching. I get to just help other actors, and I do act too. I do indies. I was on Nashville. I was on Sun Records, last year. I was also the acting coach for that production. So, they called me one day and they said, "We need you. Someone's dropped out." So I went and, filmed the scene. But, so I get to do my acting chops as well.
You know what I find too, especially since I started doing this podcast in 2015, I noticed that this red carpet flashbulbs stuff that they show you in Los Angeles is not real life.
Right, exactly.
Because a lot of the people I've been interviewing, although I haven't interviewed really A-listers, I've interviewed people that really have regular lives. Like, like people that do regular things. Like,
the thing is, to me, I was just thinking about that. It's funny because the TV was on and I saw that and I thought about it. I thought, that was never what I wanted. I mean, I've been on the red carpet and I had my picture taken, but it was never what I wanted. I really wanted to act. That's something that I love, and you put up with stuff so that you can do that. But a lot of actors are actually shy. It's not that everyone's an exhibitionist. It's a strange sort of oxymoron, but I was never really into the phoniness. I mean, I attended the Academy Awards once, and you watch all that, and it's just like, wow, I mean, I don't have any interest in creating a false front like that.
Exactly.
I'm not invested in it. So, but I have been around. There are A-list actors, I think, who live for that, and I think there are A-list actors who they don't really feel, they do what they have to do, but that's not really where their heart is. So, A-list actors are like anyone else. There's all different kinds, and the reasons that they're doing things are different reasons. But, I'm just not comfortable around that stuff. It's really commerce. It's commercial. It's sales, and it's just not my thing.
Well, I applaud you for that. And you know what? If you're happy with the acting coach thing, you know what? If that's where you're strongest, then I encourage you to keep at that.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yes,
I think there's a point where you got to do what feels right, what makes you happy, and that's what I encourage other actors to do. If I see someone doing something and it's making them miserable, I was just coaching someone, an actress, and I could see as I was giving her something to try in her acting, I could see that it suddenly struck me, oh, she's beating herself up. I said, "Are you beating yourself up?" And she said, "Yes." So I talked to her about that. Actors do that sometimes, but ultimately it serves no purpose in acting. It doesn't help you. So it's more healthy to think of it in terms of the process of acting. You try something, and it either works or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, then you learn how to try something else. That's the process of acting. That's healthy acting. No teacher ever told me that stuff. They never stopped me and say, "Hey, don't beat yourself up." But that's the kind of stuff I'll put out there, if the actor's receptive, because you can teach healthy acting, and that's really what I'm doing.
Well, we applaud you for that.
Thanks, man.
Well, we're coming just about to the end here. I was wondering if there's anything else you want to plug?
Gosh, I mean, no, I think that's good. That's we've covered everything.
Well, I'll definitely put you in touch with Scotty McCoy. I think you'll like him.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, he's a good cat. I want to thank you for coming on the show today. It's
for asking.
You're my first male interview from A New Beginning.
Yay!
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, you didn't get to act alongside those gorgeous women in the film.
I know, but I have had my chance to act across some gorgeous women in my life.
Just out of curiosity, which one was the most gorgeous?
Well, I think as far as the actresses, Lisa Bonet was definitely up there.
Oh yeah, I liked her in High Fidelity.
Yeah, and Sherilyn Fenn. I mean, she was gorgeous. So those are a couple.
Yeah, well, there you go. You may.
And then, hey, I can always act it across Sophia Loren. You can't beat that.
Absolutely. Well, before you go, do you mind doing a plug for my show?
Not at all.
Yeah, just state your name and say that you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise. That's the name of my show. And say it in New Brunswick, Canada.
Okay, hang on. Let me write it down so I can remember.
Sure.
Greg Gilbert.
Yep.
And then it's called
Python's Paradise.
Python's Paradise
Yep.
in New Brunswick.
Yeah, New Brunswick, Canada.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess because there's New Brunswick and New Jersey, I guess. So.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You ready?
Here I go.
Okay.
I'm Corey Parker, and I'm listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise in New Brunswick, Canada.
God bless you, Corey, and good luck with your acting coaching, and I wish you the very best in the future.
Thanks, man.
You got to teach the people in your class that song you sang in The New Beginning.
Yeah, that's valuable.
You should get like a chorus line to sing it.
You could get like a male choir.
And sing that song.
A cappella, yeah.
There you go. The next Pitch Perfect.
Yeah, from like Yale or somewhere, really distinguished.
There you go. That would work.
Yeah. Okay, man.
Well, Corey, thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you, and you take care.
You too.
Yep, bye-bye.